conversation.
Talk like you drive here, how about that?
You can
So I
hear
took
me?
the T on the way here this morning, got on the red line with a lot of people, acting crazy, nothing
Super.
cool.
You good, son?
It looks like local access television, so
It's like C-SPAN.
well framed.
It's a C-SPAN thing,
It's
right?
really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, he can also zoom in.
Okay.
So we have 3 cameras that all have the ability, he can, by remote,
Was this,
control the camera and the zoom.
did you set this up during COVID?
So
or
can I
was it-
tell you something? This is a super secret, as long as I'm not being recorded. When I first got here, there was this document I would say, psychological religious practitioner. And the Swedenborgian Church was involved in establishing the World Parliament of Religions. And so a bunch of the wealthier families in Boston and in Chicago did a lot, paid for a lot to bring world religious leaders here, give them rail passes. So D.T. Suzuki and Vivekananda and a bunch of the other folks kind of came through the Boston ports and came in and possibly because of that had a run-in with the Swedenborgians and then kind of went, I want to read up about this guy. And then after, in the 1920s, I think, is when he wrote his book on Swedenborg, Buddha of the North. So it's an intriguing figure. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Alrighty. Oh, camera's running. Yeah, his son is in multiple places, so he's the backbone of of the creature that is today, which makes him little seen but very important for the structure. So I would like to welcome everyone here for the very first kind of Klein lecture talk sort of thing. I don't know what to call it exactly, but it celebrates the establishment of the Klein Scholarship at UMass Boston, which of course celebrates the Reverend Dr. J. Theodore Ted Klein, the great work that he did here and the great work he did at UMass Boston. And I'm proud to say that we did something that no one ever does, which is we gave a scholarship to a public institution for the purposes of studying ethics and philosophy, which in my opinion is a underappreciated academic discipline at this point, and really is the foundation of the academy itself, and yet is overlooked so often. And so I would like to have our guests introduce themselves, just so you all get a chance to know them and talk about what they are doing, and then the faculty Yumiko, the faculty that brought folks together, maybe she could say a hi, and then we'll start the discussion. Sound good?
Hello, my name is Noah Siegelstone. I am a junior at UMass Boston, and I'm double majoring in political science and philosophy, and honored to be here today.
Hello, my name is Quayash. I'm a sophomore at UMass Boston. I'm a double major in criminal justice and philosophy and public policy. Happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Abraham Bravo. I'm also a double major, like Noah, political science and philosophy. It's also a pleasure to be here.
Oh. Hi, I'm Yumiko Yukai. I'm associate professor and chair of the philosophy department. Maybe I should just stand here. Oops. Well, first of all, on behalf of the philosophy department, I'd like to express our deepest gratitude for your generosity and your support of our students. Actually, this is absolutely meaningful for all our students as well as for the faculty member, because it really helps. It gives us a really meaningful impact on the way we also can do our work, that is teaching like Ted devoted his life to. And I just want to begin a little bit by sharing how we actually came to focus on the topic of love. That's what we're going to talk about today. Because we actually received two topics, actually. I think Reverend Baxter might have come up with math. I don't know. Okay, so one question was, how do you live a life of love? Another one was something about ethical issues in the society now. And when we heard, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that was me, yeah.
I think you put the second one on your flyer, I think, that is on your website, I think. But when I actually kind of, posed those questions to them, and we said, love, huh? And then we said, well, we can't actually answer that question unless we know what we're talking about. So what is love? That's what we started to talk about. And it turned out that we all said that I don't know. We don't know. I don't know, he said. They said, oh, I don't know what love is. And then that kind of uncertainty is exactly what opens the door to a lot of conversations, actually, right? And on that day, we met twice, actually, to talk about this. And the first time we spent a little more than an hour over sandwiches and pizzas. and then the second time, again, nearly 2 hours. So we talk about just love among ourselves, like 3 hours. Did we come to any answer? No, actually not. But because we don't have a definite, clear answer to that. But actually, we had a wonderful conversation among ourselves, and that's exactly what we do. In fact, our students and these students are so deeply engaged. They can be so deeply engaged with the questions that really matter to us in life, whatever they are. And that is exactly, what get us, professors, teachers, going in life. And it is our privilege and also totally, completely inspiring to be part of that kind of conversations with our students. And you are the ones who are really helping them and helping us indirectly to make our lives so meaningful as even faculty. And again, I really want to thank you all for doing this. But now, I am not going to talk about what love is. And they're going to, but the thing is, as I said, there is no answer, right? But they do have a little bit of idea. They said that I have no idea, I don't know. But then once we start to talk, they knew a little. They have an idea, and we have never articulated it, right? So that's what we did, and that's what I want us to do today. And because I want you to be part of this wonderful, beautiful conversations that I have privilege to be part of every single, not day, but week. And so I think that Abraham, this is funny, a little. Abraham has a little more definite, actually, idea of love. I think these two might disagree with him. So I am going to put him first. So that they can go after him. Anyway, but please join the conversation however you want, and please jump in. But yes, Abraham.
All right, cool. Yeah. So how I look at love is more of an action than anything else. So love is I do something or I express something in a way to show that I love another person. When we usually describe love, there's usually 3 aspects to it. There's a platonic version, there's a romantic version, and there's another like sort of erotic notion as well. So, and typically different aspects of relationships between one another kind of fits when you mix these types of loving per se. If you put a commitment type of relationship with a friendship type, that creates more of a friend, like your best friend or something like that. If you mix commitment and eroticism, you make sort of a relationship, like your boyfriend or girlfriend. If you mix, what was it, the other one? Well, the point is, if you mix all of them together, you can sort of get a commitment, friendship, erotic, sort of relationship where it becomes more of a married partnership in a sense. That's what I would call a kind of sort of perfect type of love. If you fall out, it's whatever. But well, it's not whatever. But it's a sort of way to describe of how I see love as like sort of an action-based, oriented type of relationship with another person. This feeling that I would say what we associate love is more of the fleeting type. It's not something substantial in a sense. But meanwhile, if you focus on love as a sort of action, the one that you can pursue, the one that you can grow with, that's more of a quote-unquote virtue. I hope my rambling made sense.
I think we were talking a bit about the Platonic kind of elements of it, and that's kind of what stemmed the conversation, because there's this wonderful dialogue, a Platonic dialogue, called the Symposium, and it really centers around love. And we're kind of playing with kind of the ideas in it, and we're thinking about kind of the three notions of love, the three different iterations where they can come through, like eros, agape, and then like phil, like love of particular action. And kind of the cumulative effect that eros can have, kind of this thing where you start with a very, what we would consider just a very basic human sort of love with one another. It's like you look at someone, you're like, that's a very beautiful person. And then the way it scales, of course, anytime. And the way it scales up into different kind of it proliferates through different iterations where you find that, okay, a love of a body can be kind of transcended by a love of knowledge, a love of what's going on in someone's head, what they're saying. And then that kind of turns, you catch a glimpse of the love of the wisdom that they're saying themselves. And it's like, okay, so maybe it's not the words that we're enjoying, that we're appreciating here, but it's kind of the underlying thought, the underlying emotion behind it. And gradually you kind of scale up and you find kind of this Platonic ladder, if you will, of more kind of like this perfect idea of love that you kind of come to grasp from interacting with people in different iterations. But it's always this interpersonal connection. It always has to rely on conversation, on questioning, on talking, on working with other people to figure out how do I identify a sort of knowledge and a sort of thing that within myself, but also that exists kind of as this cloud that we're existing within. And then when in our conversations, that's I think where Question and I kind of started to step out, because we were like, it feels like when you're identifying as like the self within that love, you're not kind of able to really encapsulate the changing nature of love and the way that it can exist in different iterations and manifest in different capacities through different lives and different people. And then when you think of ourselves as constantly changing, constantly evolving kind of bundles of individuals, where some traits, right, like when I was a baby, would you be able to look at me now and be like, oh, that is the same person? It's like, no, there are different traits. There's different elements that kind of manifest at different stages in life, and there's different constituent components, right? And then as kind of that evolves, so do the way we express our emotions and the way we experience our emotions. But does that change the essence of the emotion itself? And we're kind of trying to grapple with this and figure out how does that manifest.
Yeah. So when Professor Yumiko asked me that question, it's like, what is love? I was like, I don't know if I have a clear answer. And I kind of redirected that question when one of my friends asked me, oh, what's the difference between the way you love your friends versus the way you love your partners? And for some reason, I was struggling to differentiate the love, the essence of love itself, what's so different. The way it manifests, the way it shows in action is different, but perhaps like the whole just foundation of love itself isn't so different when I just love people for who they are. Regardless of what kind of relationship I have with them. And then I was kind of like, so what is that foundation? How do I define that foundation? And that's where I struggled. I do not know how to define that foundation. It's like I know how it differently shows up, and I know how it expresses itself differently with the other relationships I have, but I don't know what's the common baseline of it, kind of. It's like, it's something that I know exists, but something that I don't know fully how to explain. Like, I feel like if I try to explain love, I miss what love is. Maybe it's not explainable in that way. It's just something you know within you. And that's how I approach love. It's just something you know. But there's no clear way to define what it could be or what it is. And it's just that, again, like knowing the person, like just kind of like how you mentioned Hegel's thing about like seeing like a reflection of yourself in another person, and the other person being able to see the reflection of themselves in you, to be completely seen by the other person. That's what like true connection, true love could be. But yeah.
And yeah, right. Like we started this foundation where it was like it felt like we were starting from nothing, right? Like if anyone's read like Descartes, it's like he started from nothing. It's like, how do I build from nothing? And so it felt like when we're trying to create like some sort of discussion about this. We're like, we don't really know where to start. It feels like this constantly changing weird sort of where is I gonna go with this? And then we kind of were thinking, okay, so we're gonna be in a church, we're gonna be talking about this, and the kind of three forms of love that were identified by Plato are like the agape, it's like that divine love that's felt. And it's like the love that like a kind of an unchanging, omnipotent, omnipresent God kind of feels for you. And we're like, can humans feel that type of love? Is that something that we can express as a subjective individual? And we kind of tussled with this for a while. We're like, we're not entirely sure. I doubt it, because we are changing beings. We are contingent on our surroundings. And it's hard for someone who's changing to mirror a sort of love that is unchanging and constantly around us, right?
It's so interesting though, because like I think I really vibe with what you were saying with the three tiers or whatever, but I also think you're leaving out, and again, I don't know your background, like a parent loving their child, like that's what, that is an unchanging thing. You don't know a baby, like they're giving you nothing, you know, but a lot of parents experience that unchanging kind of, it's hard to categorize it though. Like I don't love my kid because she's a good conversationalist, you know, like I just love her because she's
That's
there.
another thing that I agree with. Actually, when we were discussing about with love and all that stuff, specifically like when I said the virtue of action of like what is love, like you said, there's nothing seems to be underneath it. I can't really define what causes me or what makes me choose another person, right? Like I don't necessarily, if I have a child, I don't necessarily chose that child to be mine, right? I don't necessarily sort of quote unquote choose who I fall in love with. It sort of happens, and the expression of that is the virtue called the action. But like you said, we're looking at nothing underneath. It's not comparable to like charity or other virtues as well.
In the symposium, my recollection of it, it's been a long time since I've read the symposium. My recollection is that Plato puts forward, through these various dialogues, different forms of love, but particularly to break them down and say this is the whole that's in them, as he's trying to get to a definition of true love. And he talks about the idea of, well, we have this love of attraction towards things, but that in the end ultimately can't be what it is, because he ultimately goes down to the sense that you need to have a kind of sense of unity or connection with the picture of the puzzle piece, right, where you feel whole because the two of you are connected. And he kind of goes to that, and I'm just going to say, culturally at the time, he kind of says like a man could never experience that with a woman, because a woman was so beneath a man. Right, where now we have exactly the opposite understanding, or we hold that relationship oftentimes, maybe not in modern times, but we'll say in the 1950s, we hold that picture as being the ideal picture of a loving relationship, where in Plato's time, it could only happen with somebody who was like you, and becomes the formation of pederasty, for anybody who likes big words, but we don't need to get into what that is. So I guess my question is, we talk about this lived experience. If one of the things that we talk about is what is our connection to? And I think as we live in this world, can you have love, and how do you have love? Maybe for someone that you've never met.
Yeah, so like kind of backtracking to me connecting about like different relationships I have with people, even if it's like family, siblings, partners, friends. For me, at the end, it's kind of like the answer I keep going to is simply because they're human. And I feel like that also connects to your point. It's simply because there's somebody who's human like me that makes me more curious about how they live. They makes me more caring. So even if it's a stranger, I feel like there's still like the sense of like the unity and the community because we're humans. And I feel like we can still have like love and care for those people even if we're not like personally connected to them, simply because it's just like fundamentally just loving a human being. And yeah, that's kind of like how I would answer the question.
Sure.
Before going into the someone you've never met component, I want to kind of touch back to the puzzle idea and then what you said about your daughter. And I think that's kind of where I draw, where I don't feel fully satisfied by Plato's idea of love in this case, because a puzzle piece is incomplete without the rest of the pieces around it. You can't see a full image, right? It's like a piece of it is just kind of a component. You need another individual, you need another something to complete it. And I think the idea of love that feels a little bit more satisfying is rather, as opposed to a individual piece, we're each an entire puzzle. I'm a complete puzzle, you're a complete puzzle. And then love is when you're able to kind of both view that same image. It's like, it would be like a reflection. There's like a lake, right? And you have a castle on one side, like the actual castle, and then a reflection of the castle, right? Where you're able to see one, like a mirrored version of itself in it, where they're both entirely themselves, and they're both entirely its own image, but there's still that like thing where it's, I can observe, I can see myself reflected in you, you can see yourself reflected in me, and then we're able to bring two completely individual parts together to kind of have an even more holistic dynamic with it. And it's like when you look at your child, right, you see parts, you see yourself in her, you see that you are being recognized as a mother, and she sees that she's being recognized as a daughter. You said daughter?
Yeah.
Daughter, yes, she's being recognized as a daughter. And so then there's that mutual recognition that allows for there to just be that innate bond without there having to be another emotional pull to it, without there having to be kind of this like kind of wishy-washy definition on it. There's just that reflection, that mutual understanding as person to person. It could be person to object. I have a blanket that was made for me when I was born, and it was knitted by one of my mom's best friends. And every time that I see that blanket, I'm like, that's a reflection of me, and in it, like that is a part where I'm like, that's my life, right? And it's like I can have love for an inanimate object in that case as well. I can have that, and I think it's so important to not get confined in the emotional components of love, because that's kind of that changing, that's that contingent part that's really hard to pin down and put a description on. But when you're able to kind of just say like, is there that sort of acknowledgement where you're allowed to fully be yourself, or you're able to fully be yourself and another is able to fully be themselves, and then you kind of are able to meld. In one of Yumiko's classes, we took it as an Asian philosophy class, and we were talking about Taoism. And she very had to drill in the point that a yin yang isn't like some part of something and part of another like coming together into one like circle, and like it's not like kind of the hippy dippy way of looking at it, but rather it's like entirely there is 100% of this thing within 100% of that, and it's kind of the contradictory meld that's still made possible just by its account of existing, right? And I find that kind of underlying that 100% contradiction, whether or not you want to look at it as a contradiction or not, is the most somewhat way I could boil it down to. I don't know. Sorry, I rambled. My bad.
I sort of agree, but kind of disagree. Love is a weird thing where it's you need the existence of another thing to put onto.
Mhm.
I need an object to put my love towards, whether it be myself or it be another person. So that means it has to need, like, the existence of another human being needs to be there in order for love to be, which kind of points towards the love of the stranger. It could be that only because the existence of another human being makes a possibility for us to love that other human being. And because that underlying existence, the mere appearance of the other makes me gravitate towards like loving them. It could also be hating them as well, but I mean, we're talking about loving. It's like, let's say there's no one on Earth, right? And just me and this other person. There's really two options. Either I can love them or I cannot. And it tends to be like, because the existence of another person, it seems to be like we gravitate towards to love another person.
Would it be possible to still experience love if there were no other people?
I don't think so. I mean, if
For no other things.
another things, yeah.
I mean, that's, so it's interesting. One of the things that I certainly know that Ted quoted at one point is that love is life itself. And I don't know if that's where you were
No.
going, but love is life itself, and there's an aspect just about our creation that inspires us to love, because love isn't separate from life in many ways. Like, you know, when you ask what is life, you can get to a scientific definition. You know, but what is life in motion usually involves some form of action. The same is true with love. But, you know, I think that the concept of, you know, can you love if you don't actually have interaction, if you don't have what we generally understand as a life, can you actually love? And, you know, I would argue that most every creature that exists exhibits love. I don't know what you were saying.
Well, what I was gonna say, I don't know if I've met all of you formally, but I was married to Ted for 50 plus years. And, when he died, we had these prayer cards made up, and we needed to put one quote on the back. It's his definition of love. So,
Really?
yeah, which he took from Swedenborg. He talked about this all the time. So I brought some too, if you want to have one as a souvenir. And he said, love, this is a quotation from Swedenborg now, but the one that Ted used all the time. Love consists in this, that its own should be another's. To feel the joy of another as one's own, that is loving. That last part was really important to him. To feel the joy of another as one's own, that is loving. And to me, that connects with the situation of loving people you don't know. I mean, somebody who, you know, a group of people who got liberated from something, you know, you don't know them individually, but you can feel the joy. You know, you can connect with them in that way. Anyway, I just thought, since you were talking about love, I'd mention that.
What a perfect quotation to have in the back. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was considered.
So that's why I would say it's not a mutual recognition. One, the party who's receiving the love doesn't have to recognize that they're being to recognize that they're themselves loved. They just feel like something's happening towards it, but they don't have to reciprocate it back to it. And so it's like, I used to believe like love was the second hardest virtue. The first one was faith. It's only because it's almost a self-sacrificing form of virtue, where it's like I have to, if I truly love someone, I put all my action towards something, even though I will not get anything in return. But, yeah. Exactly.
No, I agree. But at the same time, like, we had this conversation with Professor Yumiko. It's like, as human beings, do we have the capability to actually be that selfless? Because we are very egocentric beings. Like, yes, we need the community, we need people around us, we are social beings, but at the same time, we always put ourselves first. Or, most of the times, I mean, there's definitely people who are very selfless, but yeah, are we like fully that selfless at the end of the day? Like, is that something we can fully achieve or not?
Sorry. Forgive me. Okay. I like, yes, like this and then building. I kind of, so then the question that comes to mind is, do we ever really not know anyone? Because when we hear about a community that's been liberated from something, who we may not have a personal knowledge of them, we still have our personal impressions of what it means to be human and what it would feel like to be liberated from that. And we have our own ideas that we place onto that experience, and we make a personal assumption in that we know what it feels like. And so when we celebrate in our minds, we are celebrating the feeling that we would understand with that. And so still, even if it's someone we don't know, we're seeing a reflection of us in their experience. And we're seeing how we would experience that and what emotions would be evoked when we had an experience like that. And so I think it still is that interpersonal definition of love that I tried to kind of get at a little bit earlier, where it's like, it's one, it's still contingent because it's contingent on ourselves, on us being us and our own conception of how we experience in any environment. And then two, it's still that interrelational bit where when something happens to another, it's still how we relate to another in that case. And it doesn't, again, it doesn't matter if it's one-sided. They may not know that that's how we're relating to them. And then, I mean, I guess you could, if you want to kind of put like terms and things, and it couldn't be like true love because there isn't that like, well, I don't know if I want to go that far. That's a dangerous step to take. I'm not going to say that. Scratch that from the record, Your Honor. But I think it's still just as interrelational.
Because like, again, like going back to like to feel the joy for someone is to, yeah, like have that reflection. The reason you feel joy for someone is like because you recognize that you would feel joy for it too if that happened to you. And that's kind of like also like how empathy plays. It's like even if I don't go through something, but I see somebody I really care about go through something, I feel for them, happiness, sadness, anger, whatever. But that's again from that interpersonal connection. If even if it's somebody on the MBTA, on the train, going through something, is that ability to see them as a human and see like if I were in their situation, how I'd feel, and that's how it is. Like it's again still that reflection of like me putting myself in that shoes, that the slightly egocentric of if I were going through that, how would I feel? And that's how where the feeling for each other also comes from. Because like I don't know if that makes sense.
Then would you agree? So what I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Would you say that you need the ego to love?
Crowd work.
Can I jump in?
Absolutely.
This is how I see, because this is what we talked about. So, first of all, to me, it sounds like when Abraham is talking about love, and then you're talking about self-sacrificing in loving, it sounds like the love is something that is in the loving, lover, right? Not in the lover. Can I put it that way? The lover is the one that is loving, and the object of love is the beloved. That's how I understand the word.
Yeah.
So the love seems to be in you, the lover, but the way they were talking about love, to say that it actually arises, that exists only in the interrelational whole. Love is not in the lover or not in the beloved. Love is the whole. It sounds to me, but then that's a paradox, because when the two people are there, let's suppose two people, it doesn't matter that it's stranger or daughter or mother or whoever, and the way that they were talking about this interconnection, seeing yourself in the other, and blah blah blah, reflection and this and that, and the way we are talking, of course, there is always this subject, the lover and beloved, this duality there. But then the true interconnection in which there's the whole connected in the way Noah and Quraysh is talking about, there's no I, the lover or beloved anymore. It's just the two almost unified in this union, in the whole connected, where there's no self or not self or the lover or beloved anymore. That's why the joy and the happiness, even the sadness, all those things are felt quote unquote together. It's not mine, it's not theirs, it's not mine, it is just the joy that is arising. That is the instance where the loving is happening. But then as soon as when we take our own perspective, I'm a mother, she's a daughter, so I love her, and that's what it is. So suddenly, once we take that perspective to describe it, the love becomes something that is in the loving, and then it becomes more egoistic or ego-centered way of thinking about this whole phenomena where the love is happening. But does that make sense? Yes, so I think that the way they would seem to be, to me, talking about as love is not the love that is in the lover, but rather that's what is almost like infusing, permeating. That's the whole.
again, the question of whether or not love is something that we can make into, we'll say, dualism or subject-object, because it arises between the subject-object, or whether or not love is something that actually flows through us, that creates the appearance of subject-object, but it is part of the unified whole. One of the things that alarmed me, and I hate to pick on you, early on it was, love is experienced in action. And so one of the things that I drone on and on about is our ability to lie as people. And it's very easy to appear as if one is loving, as if one is caring. I like to say, we are all victims of marketing. There's a whole industry of lies that spends billions of dollars to understand us, to lie to us, to manipulate us, to do what other people want us to do. And if you think you're not affected by it, smarten up, you are. We're constantly manipulated, we're constantly being lied to. So there is this concept of love, which is this, this pure motive, this pure thing that drives through us. And then there are the actions that we do. And love is kind of this core, and then actions are a momentary glimpse. It reminds me of particle physics, how you can know the location of a particle or its direction, but you can't know both. And you could have somebody going in towards selfishness, anger, and meanness, and take the snapshot of where that particle is, and it appears as the Sackler ring at the hospital. When the reality is, or you look around at all the Perkins labeled stuff, as the Perkins family seeks to buy their identity out of slavery, right? Is it being done because they have a love for humanity, or is it being done because they want to be seen at parties and celebrated? It's hard to know. And so you get this particle physics thing of, you have these actions which appear as good, but then you have the driving will or the driving force. And the world of politics, if you guys are both going into politics, is extra hard because oftentimes you can have two people who agree that they need to love the community or love the group, and they take a snapshot of the picture, and the two particles are in different spots. But the desire is the same, or you can have times where they can agree on something, and the particle's in the same spot, but one's going in and one's going out. Does that make sense? And so this concept of love is this larger binding thing, and we're on it, and we exist through kind of this. I'm going to pop into Plato, I'm sorry for anyone who doesn't know it. Love is substance, right? But our actions become forms. And the question is, what substance is in that form? And Plato acknowledged our forms in this world are imperfect because some of the substance isn't always real.
I think it's really important to try to separate action from definition in this case, because as you identified, it's really difficult to pinpoint whether an action is truly rooted in something. And I mean, kind of anecdotally, some of the times I felt most loved by my mom were when she's screaming at me, and we're in an argument, right? And it's just back and forth, but it's she is taking the time, she loves me so much that she's taking the time and energy to tell me what she thinks, and to be you're wrong about this, fix yourself, straighten up, get better, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm okay, I'm getting screamed at, but I'm loved, right? And so, but typically when you see someone yelling, you don't think, oh, they must love them, right? And so I think trying to conflate action with the underlying thing, if there is a thing, I don't want to posit that there is it's hard to actually place any definition on it. And again, I think this is kind of where it goes back to where maybe I don't necessarily agree with Plato's version of it, because it's really love is absolutely contingent on things, and it changes, it doesn't express in a constant manner. And so if it's hard to try to identify through action necessarily. Sorry, that's half-baked thought.
This is why I said love is one of the hardest virtues, only because you're absolutely correct. There's always the underlining
You gotta be careful with my ego in that.
No, no, no.
They don't like it when you tell me I have that.
There's like, what, you said it yourself, like, for example, if I create a hospital, is it for my own ego, like to express, like, for people to say, oh, this guy made a hospital, or is it for the beneficial of the community? That's where it's like, in the public sphere, where we have to like guess, right? But in the personal sphere, well, actually, you can sort of guess. It's like, for the beloved to receive the loved from the lover, you have to, like, that love is for the ends, for the beneficial, for the beloved. So you can kind of tell when, for example, if like I make a hospital and it's all free. It's like out of the goodness and everything that I have, I gave it for everyone to have free healthcare in that hospital, right? Meanwhile, I just charge up everything and just make everyone go into debt, and yet there's a hospital, you know? It's like, in that sense, you can kind of, you would have to have some sort of prudence to decide, is this person actually loving me, or is it all for show? And which would go push back against the action. Sorry.
I would say, this is telling us that love is subjective. In his example, his mother's yelling at him, "This boss really loves me, look at all that energy." And somebody else can look at it totally opposite. "Oh, wow, it's really right to yell," you know. Naming a hospital, giving a hospital wing, you know, and you say, "Wow, they really love humans." And Kevin's saying, "Yeah, but they wanted their name on that." And that's, you know, they have a whole different perspective on it. So it's subjective.
Yeah.
It can be, there are all these different ways of love.
It's a very subjective thing. You have to be the one that receives it
It's
to
hard for us
understand
to
it.
say what it, you know, everybody has their point of view.
Exactly. So we get to the question, what is love?
Yeah.
So that kind of just goes back to my first point. Maybe love is not definable at all in the first place. it just manifests itself in so many different ways that we just don't know. We just know that love, it's something we just experience, but it just comes up as different ways. It just expresses itself as different ways. Like for Noah, love was when his mom was shouting at him.
And other times.
Yes. So it's like the way it manifests and the way we feel it can be so different for everyone. So it's like it really feels so hard to define it. So, but we still feel it though. You know, even regardless of how subjective it is, how differently we feel, we still feel it. So that kind of like relates to Taoism again. Like you can understand, like you can feel the Tao, but there's no way to define the Tao. And if you define it, you lose what it is. Because if I said love is being happy for someone, no one can quickly disagree and be like, no, love can be feeling angry for someone too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, as soon as we start defining it, we lose what it could be or what it is.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
Yeah.
The action of love is not, it's not necessarily a like positive feeling or a negative feeling as well. Like the love of a mother is not necessarily like, oh, here's like breakfast, but it's also I'm taking your video games away or something like that, which is good. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, it's also like no, sorry.
So you were saying it's an unknowable and undefinable thing. William James, I don't know if you guys ever hear William James. I'm going to give you the big horrible truth about William James. He was one of the greatest, I think, in his generation. And the people who are philosophers, they read William James as a philosopher. The people who are psychologists read William James's psychology books, but rarely read his philosophy books. And the people who understood, he had philosophy books, yeah. And the people who read him for theology and religion rarely read his philosophy or theology, but he himself was as a thinker much more holistic in what he was trying to do, which is get at the core of the human experience. And so he comes up with pragmatic philosophy, pragmatic psychology, and one would even argue pragmatic faith. if you really look at some of the stuff he talks about in his understanding. But he argues that the things that are real might not be able to be measurable as themselves, but they're measurable because of the effect.
Yeah.
And so here we have a situation where love isn't knowable, but if you go around the world and you talk about love, people will talk about the quickening of the heart for the arrows, right? And the blood pressure spikes and the feelings that they have, and they're universals. And they're not defined by the item, but they're defined by the symptom of the item. And then you know, when you talk about people who have deep friendships, the way those deep friendships give them compassion, give them calm, give them, you know, certain experiences, those experiences seem to somewhat be universal. And so, you know, here we have this unknowable thing, but it has symptoms, we'll say, of knowability. And I'm just wondering, given I'm looking towards wrapping up a little bit, each one of you think you know what you want to do with your life. When I was your age, I did. I was going to burst into talk radio. I was going to be a talk radio host. That's really what I wanted to be when I was
Is this
in
adjacent?
college. Huh?
Is this adjacent?
No. No, I ended up realizing that I was just running from what I was really meant to do. And so each one of you has kind of feeling or direction in your life, and I'm guessing this is, if you take this notion of presuppose, you don't have to agree with it, presuppose that, you know, love is a force that runs behind the world, and that we have the ability to measure symptoms. How would you all, in maybe the direction you currently see yourself, utilize those symptoms to either do something or to understand what you're doing? Does that make sense? I think we should pick on. I think we should pick on the old. I think the closer you are to graduation, the earlier you go.
That's all you. Take it away.
Listen. I'll just like to preference that when I was there defending like love as a virtue, it's not what I fully believe. I'm actually, these guys kind of convinced me a little bit more. I see the limitations of virtue.
Don't back down. Don't back down.
But yeah, so my calling since I was young, I felt like to be called for the other person. I don't know if I can call that love. I don't know if I can call that, like, I'm religious as well, so it's usually like, I see it as like God pushing me towards the other person. So it's kind of like that's kind of where I'm going towards. The thing that I want to do is towards fulfilling that moment or that call of the other, in a sense. I don't know if that answers the question at all.
I don't think there's right or wrong. I was just trying to, you know, have you all make a statement about you all in a deeper way about the direction you're heading, and mixing it with the idea of what does it mean to either show love or to listen to love is the direction that I was really heading.
So yes, baby.
That's it. We're doing age-based. Okay. Cool. So I'm 21. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with my life. But I am kind of torn between wanting to go into education and wanting to go into law. And I feel like both things has this interpersonal thing. And if we're going from the presupposition of what love is and how to kind of recreate it, manifest it in whatever calling you find yourself in, I currently work as kind of an educator for civics, different educational or civic procedures, and I really, whenever I'm like working with students, I really like that moment when you kind of see that just like appreciation of like knowledge of what they're learning, what they're working on, that excitement, and like you say, like the way love manifests, like a quickened heart rate, like maybe like sweaty palms, something like this. Excitement, enthusiasm manifests in similar ways, right? And it's just like if you see that there's this kind of love of learning, a love of being able to be helped or help another, and I think I don't exactly know what kind of the future will entail, but I know that it feels really good to see that kind of light in students and people I get the chance to work with, and both my parents are, you know, they're centered around helping people. My dad's a nurse, my mom's a massage therapist, right? It's a lot about like helping, doing things for other people. And so I don't know, I like kind of that feels like it could be a nice driving apparatus behind whatever things are. It's like, where can you bring that sense of joy, that sense of enlightenment, for lack of a better word? I don't know.
No, yeah, same. I'm just 20.
So,
I'm still figuring out what I like. Even with my studies, I'm still like figuring out new classes, like seeing what I actually enjoy. And it's like always changing. What I enjoyed last year is not what I enjoy today. And that probably goes for the future too. Maybe I'm sitting here and then next year I'll be like, I don't like philosophy, I do not want to do this. I don't think so that would be true. I think I've been enjoying it a lot. But that could happen, like, because we're just growing. But I think the one common thing I really value is just curiosity. Like, again, kind of like going back to the willingness to learn, willingness to go out and explore. And I just want to like talk to people as much as possible, because it's like I only have this one limited circle of mind, and there's this one idea of how I want to live life, and that curiosity helps me expand how I look at things, and that is only possible when I open my heart to like listening to other people, open my heart to like being around with other people who have different experiences than me, and like college for me has been that exploring part. So first I wanted to do psychology, again, because I was like, oh, as a teenager who struggled with mental health, I want to become the helping hand for somebody who could be struggling, wishing I had that. But then I was like, no, that's savior complex. That's not where I want to go. And then I realized I like advocacy more. It's not more so doing it for the people, or it's more so with the people, learning through them, understanding them, and understanding just like how they live. And that's the curiosity I want to approach life with. And I think that itself is like the love in life. Like for me, that's the love. It's just like just wanting to do as much as I can, and just wanting to learn as much as I can, and being curious about other beings, and that then could become that hopefully interpersonal relationship. But that's how I think right now.
That's a way better answer than
We can go back.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I was going to say, with your statement of compassion, that's one of the things we talk about, the symptoms of love that we don't talk about. I'm in the midst of, for one reason or another, not for one reason or another, but I'm working with Mary Kay on publishing a posthumous volume of Ted's writings, and I was yesterday in his book on learning compassion. And that value of the curiosity to know. Also in biblical languages, you don't have the concept, you have agape love mentioned, but you have also this concept of being known, which ties in with the notion of divine love, is what does it mean to know? And that way, it's one of those, when we love something, we want to know it. And so that's also one of the pragmatic side effects there, and it's a good.
Yeah. And like at the same time, I believe it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like things to know that I know I'll enjoy. Even things to know that I do not agree with, or do I see myself not enjoying, but still like wanting to explore that with an open mind. And I don't know if that answered your question.
It does.
It's like,
It's very good.
but
As I said, the beauty of discussion, you know, it started out, what is love? And that's probably why there's so many Greek words for love and definitions of love through discussion, and that's why people see it differently. It's all subjective, and that's what discussion is good for.
This has been a really great discussion. I was sitting here thinking while you guys were going back and forth, and I know I can't describe what love is. I think I can feel love. But what I do know is I believe myself the essence of love, the creation of love itself. That's what I believe. And as we begin to acknowledge that, and we begin to communicate that, and share those types of discussion, I believe we can come to some place where we can agree that we are all placed here to love. And then I think of this one notion, as a firefighter, one of the greatest things that I was ever told was that, and I've been doing it for a long time, is that there's no greater love than a person, because there are male firefighters and female firefighters, that lay down their life for someone else that they don't know. And so I wanted to share that before we left.
The conversation doesn't have to stop, but it might be time to shift our venue. We do have a collation.
Call that.
Before we shift, I just wanted to say again, thank you so much. I know there's been a long relationship with the church and UMass Boston, and we're so grateful for this scholarship. I know that Nico mentioned it, but it allows our students to have the breathing room to talk about these really important questions. And we're just, again, so grateful. Before we go to the collation, can I get a picture of everybody? Before people sneak off? If everybody wants to, I don't know. Do you want to go around?
Well, son, if you wanted to kill the stream and say bye everybody online.
Oh, yeah.